But this car behind us, the number 46, we were talking with Rod this morning. It's one of the most important Porsches of all time. And I was talking to Rod about a very small detail in the front of this car that's very special and just highlights how detail-oriented Rod and the guys are here. Can you talk to us about that hose?
Yeah, it's, for me, when I'm doing a preservation or restoration car, I've done a couple handfuls of very significant cars, 906s, 908s, some 904s. You have to really respect the history of the car first. I think that's the main thing, because you're trying to, preserve or restore something that has, something in its past that made it special and unique. So this particular car was Porsche's first race car,
Porsche's first race car is sitting right there.
The first Porsche to race and win at Le Mans. It won its class in 1951. Also finished 20th overall, finishing ahead of all the cars in the class above it. So pretty significant piece of Porsche's history. So when restoring the car, I wanted to restore it exactly back to a certain point in time, which I felt in my heart was the moment that race started, because that was the beginning of all Porsche Motorsport, or all racing efforts for Porsche. So, pouring through the photos, analyzing everything, like we said earlier, a race car evolves so much, whether it's the race or the lap. And so I wanted to do it exactly back to when it started. When Porsche showed up at Le Mans in 1951, they had two cars, the number 46 car, this one, and the number 47 car. And they had crashed the number 47 car in night practice because they couldn't see the track, they couldn't see the apexes. And so they needed to adjust the fog lights on the body, which are a body mount, and it was out of mechanical adjustment, meaning that, they tighten it down, it wouldn't go down anymore. So they took a piece of rubber hose, slid it, put it on the body, and then jammed it in between the fog light and the body. And that's where it was. Tightened it down. The car wins Le Mans. So when I restored the car, those are the type of details that I wanted, and the history that I wanted to preserve, so that we can do the storytelling like we are now.
Yeah. Sharing
with people, generations to come, that, racing is about that, tweak and that evolution. And it's not about, making the car perfect. It's about preserving those stories and history.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is you didn't miss a spot.
No, no, tried not to.
But that to me, that is the epitome of the detail here. And then, you walk through the shop, you meet the guys, and everything just lines up. There's nothing's fake here. I mean, everything is very authentic. And I think that's why, a lot of your potential customers, and why you have such a backlog of people looking to buy cars, is that the proof is in the pudding. And these are unbelievable cars that come from a seriously great system here. And I think that has to be applauded.
Yeah, and the best part about it is you're preserving cars that would previously be thrown away, right? And that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, there was a limited number of these cars. I mean, 76,000 in total for a 17, 18-year production period. So, not that many to really choose from. And you figure half of those are long gone, and, probably in the crusher or turned into beer cans, But,
so, seeing the amount of fabrication, the amount of work, and how beautifully done it is from what you have to what it becomes is really spectacular. Yeah.
Talk to us about the donor process, where you find the donor, what you look for in a donor shell, what you would take, what you wouldn't take. How does that go about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that 95% of the projects that we do, I find or procure the donor car that we're going to use for the project. Not because, people aren't capable of figuring it out, but
you have the magic touch.
Well, I'm looking for something specific. Like, I'm not going to build a car I'm not going to start with a car that's a full numbers matching all original car, for example, unless it's a special project like we're doing for Audrain, where, a preservation car, of course, I'm looking for a numbers matching every nut and bolt original. But on the outlaw cars, I'm going to put my own engine in the car. I'm going to different transmission. I'm going to modify all the parts. So it doesn't have to be a car that's, still has its engine. I'd rather leave those cars for people that are doing, preservation or restoration cars. And it doesn't matter how rusty it is because we're going to fix everything on the car anyways. So I try not to find them that are too rusty because obviously that's a lot more work for us, but I'm not afraid of it. And because I know we have the skills and the tools and the ability to fix it. But I am interested in a few components. We've got to make sure they have the window frames, or I've got to have enough window frames for the cars that we're building, and door latches and some of those core components. So typically, I tell the client, look, I'll find a donor car for you. And to be honest, it's a lot easier for me than the average guy. My net is a lot wider.
Absolutely.
People typically call me when they've got a car for sale that is maybe an in need of restoration project. Like I get a lot of cars out of body shops or people that bought a car on some auction site and thought they were going to do the restoration at home. And their wife finally, after 15 years said, honey, I know you really wanted to do this, but I want to park in the garage again. And so I get a call, and it's usually $40,000 to $60,000 or whatever, and I show up with a trailer and I load everything up and we bring it. But it's there's a lot of different models of Porsches. There's the A, B, and C. There's coupe, cabriolet, convertible, roadster, convertible D. Speedster. There's so many different models. So depending on what I'm going to build for the potential client, I do have to find a car that is going to fit the bill. Or in the case of like Hurley Haywood, Hurley wanted a speedster, but wasn't dead set on it being an original speedster body, but it had to be an original Porsche. Of
course.
So I found a coupe, like a 1960-61 coupe that has a little later chassis, and I'm going to reshape everything. So I used a 60 coupe that had roof damage and said, I'll just convert this into a speedster. He was more worried, his requirements were, I want the car to be fast. I want it to be reliable. I want it to look good. Not, does the chassis number start with an 8?
Sure.
The chassis number could start with a 1, which was a coupe number. An 8 was a convertible, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of the process. We have some flexibility because we're going to modify the cars and hot rod them out.
Yeah.
What I've really enjoyed about your story is how important family is to you, and seeing your children working in the shop and your son-in-law, and how important is the next generation to you. I mean, even your work with the actress Sydney Sweeney and her Ford Bronco project, how important is that next generation and bringing it to the next step, especially with these older cars?
Yeah, I mean, for me, if my dad and grandfather and my dad's friends wouldn't have embraced me as a young kid and given me that opportunity to kind of dabble in their world when I was a kid, I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be doing this because I wouldn't have gotten that burning love and desire for the cars. And so I do feel that it's my duty to share that passion with as many people as possible, which is why I'm, as busy as I am and as much as I want to be in the shop right now, I'm willing to sit down with guys like you because you're going to help me spread the message and love of these cars. And so as we work together, we can inspire people to at least understand that this is more than just transportation. These are not just wheels that get us from point A to point B. Like
it's how you get there.
Yeah, there's a culture behind it. There's a passion. There's, and so to be able to spend this time with my family, and be fortunate enough to have them in the business with me, I did the same thing that my dad did when my kids were little. I took them to the car shows. I let them go with me. We drove the cars. I let Zane come out in the shop with me when he was a kid. I have pictures of him. He loved to wax and polish. So I have bare metal cars that he put so much wax and grease on that it's you wonder how I ever got paint to stick on them later. But he would go out there and, wax and, And then, you know, then he loved the smell of like body filler, like Bondo, right? It was just, you know. So, you know, I'd mix it up for him, and he would make like all of our Christmas ornaments. He'd make Christmas
so cool.
ornaments, like Christmas trees out of like Bondo, you know. And so Jade, when she was little, she, you know, Daddy, I want to come out in the shop with you and work. And so both my kids went to Montessori. They loved like sitting on the floor and doing work, because that's what Montessori is. So I would, you know, when Jade was little, I made this cool little fixture for her that had all the bolt sizes on a piece of wood. So I took a piece of wood. So to her in the beginning, it was kind of like what the work she did at Montessori. But I, you know, gave her this piece of wood with nuts and bolts, and I said, match them all up. And then when one screws onto that, then put it in that box. When one screws onto that, put it in that box. One screws onto that. And so she'd come out there for hours.
Yeah.
And she'd sit there and sort all my nuts and bolts. And it was like, sure, I guess you could call it child labor, but, you know, but she fell in love with the cars. And then, you know, I've got pictures of her, you know, she had these little tiny hands, and she'd be, you know, I always had to fish the wiring harness down the tunnel. And so I'd tell her, Jade, we got a harness to do. And so she'd come out to the shop, and, you know,
You're like, thank God.
She's helping Daddy.
And she loved it, right? Yeah. And I just tried to make it a fun experience.
That's
for
amazing.
them. They went to the races with us. They did all that. But my kids were never like forced to, you know, make this a career. Just like my dad never forced me to make this a career. He just kind of exposed me to it.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward, Zane's been on, you know, a couple hundred episodes of TV, which is where he met Sydney. And he's been on movies and just wrapped being on the Goldbergs for 8 years. So he made that his career path from when he was 10 until he was, you know, in his early 20s. And Jade, she grew up doing aerial acrobatics.
Oh, wow.
But full circle, both of them have come to a point in their life where they're like, okay, we've done those other things. We've been on TV. We've gone to college. We've done that. But we want to come back to what we love, and that's being in this business and these cars.